Meanwhile, Hollywood is getting ready to launch a brand new film. It was on the cover of the Hollywood Reporter. It's an Oscar bait film. Ooh, who's excited? First of all, when I say Oscar bait, you should immediately run for the nearest doors because it means that it's going to suck. Whenever Hollywood makes a movie that is so-called Oscar bait, it is basically just going to be a left-wing claptrap version of a mediocre story, like The Shape of Water, which was just awful. But there's a new movie that is coming out, according to the Hollywood Reporter, and this new movie is called Vice. Ooh, what's it about? Well, what it is about, glad you asked. What it is about is Vice President Dick Cheney. Did we need another movie about Dick Cheney? Did we need a movie about Vice President Cheney? Of course not. This, in fact, is just the latest attempt to go after the Bush administration. But there's something telling about this. Okay, so again, this is not the first attempt to get the Bush administration. There was a movie called W with Josh Brolin, which failed dramatically at the box office. It had like a $24 million budget without publicity and advertising, without P&A. It lost money at the box office. There's another box office bomb called Truth with Robert Redford about Dan Rather's attempt to take down George W. Bush with a fake letter about military service. That was a bomb. There was a movie called You're Welcome, America, which was a Broadway play starring Will Ferrell, where Will Ferrell basically played George W. Bush as stupid Jeb Bush. None of these films actually did any business, but that is not stopping Adam McKay, who's the creator of HBO's Succession, and he also did The Big Short, from taking on W and Vice President Cheney. So what exactly is driving this? Bush left office 10 years ago, last I checked my calendar. Why are we still doing movies about George W. Bush when the only movies anyone has ever made about Barack Obama are about how he kissed his then girlfriend Michelle Obama and it tasted like chocolate, which was an actual movie on Netflix? Why are we still doing Bush? Well, because Adam McKay hates Bush, right? He says that he went to a victory party for John Kerry in 2004, and he says everyone you could imagine was there. Tom Hanks, Nicole Kidman, Will Ferrell. He says, once again, we're like, oh, they're going to lose. There's no way you'd reelect these guys after the disaster we just had. I remember Frank Rich was on the phone, and he's like, it's over. And within 2 minutes, the entire party had cleared out. This movie is going to cost $60 million. It's a $60 million budget for a movie about Vice President Cheney, in which Christian Bale puts on 45 pounds and plays Cheney as a Machiavellian devil who wants to send American troops into harm's way to maybe enrich Halliburton or something. The cast is huge. It includes Sam Rockwell as W, and Steve Carell as Donald Rumsfeld, and Tyler Perry as Colin Powell. According to McKay, Cheney was far more powerful than W because W was stupid. But here's the punchline. Hey, here's what McKay says. He says, I would choose Donald Trump over Bush and Cheney. Donald Trump has no belief system, so I would take the hyenas, the random wild animals running through the White House, over Cheney any day of the week. Now, the reason that I point all of this out is because it just demonstrates that all of the lies that the left tells about why they don't like President Trump, they are just that. They are lies. Okay, the left doesn't like President Trump because President Trump is not a leftist. It is that simple. They hated George W. Bush. They hate Donald Trump. In fact, as McKay says, he hates George W. Bush more than he hates Trump. Not because George W. Bush was less classy than Trump or something, but because George W. Bush was more ideologically conservative than Trump. The left hates conservatives. The Hollywood left despises conservatives, not because they are classless, and not because they say things on Twitter that offend, and not because they say weird things in public at press conferences. No, the left hates Donald Trump for the same reason that they hate George W. Bush. He is not a left-winger. And in fact, many of them hate George W. Bush more than they hated Trump because they think that Bush was more right-wing, which, by the way, in terms of governance is not even true. Trump has governed significantly more conservative than President Bush ever did. But this demonstrates that so much of leftist thought is based on just scorn, sneering, scathing scorn against people who are conservative in policy. It has nothing to do with the personality of the commander-in-chief. So when you hear people on the left say, Donald Trump has really robbed the Oval Office of its dignity, understand, this is not why they dislike President Trump. They dislike President Trump because President Trump does not agree with them on politics. It's the same reason that they hate President Bush. They hated President Bush because Bush did not agree with them on politics. Now, what this has led the right to do is nominate and elevate somebody like President Trump. Why? Because President Trump is fighting a cultural battle with these people. Hollywood has been sneering at us for decades, and President Trump is willing to get down in the mud with these folks and say that, and say, you guys are gross, nobody cares what you have to say, you're idiots, and call them names. And that's very appealing to a lot of folks on the right, because if you treat us with scorn, then we've been waiting for somebody to punch you guys back. And that's what President Trump is. So in other words, it is the leftist hatred for President Bush and for Mitt Romney and for John McCain that led to President Trump. Because you guys scorned all of the conservatives who you derided as corrupt and evil, then we said, okay, you know what? Obviously, being classy and nice doesn't matter to you people. And in fact, we need somebody here who's not going to be classy and nice because you don't deserve classy and nice. You're jerks. You deserve to be smacked in the head as hard as humanly possible. And you know who can do it? This guy over here. This guy with the hair. That guy can do it. It is because of people like Adam McKay that Donald Trump is president right now. Now, we can take this too far on the right. Okay, the problem for conservatives is that Adam McKay and his colleagues are not the target audience. It's entertaining for us that Adam McKay and Hollywood get slapped. Right? That's great. I enjoy it too. But there's a bunch of people in the middle of the country who don't really like Adam McKay's take on conservatives, and they don't like the slap back from the right. And what they actually are looking for is somebody who can punch back, from time to time when appropriate, but somebody who does bring class to the Oval Office. If President Trump can find that, if he can find that happy center, then he will win re-election. If he cannot, then there's a good shot that he won't. But it is important to remember what exactly drove the movement behind President Trump. What drove the movement behind President Trump was two things. The intersectional ideal pushed by the left that said that there was a new coalition of the dispossessed that was growing demographically and was going to put its boot on the throat of conservatives in the middle of the country. And then conservatives in the middle of the country said, you know what? No, we're not doing this. And then it was cultural Hollywood that said, you guys are all rubes, you guys are all morons, or you guys are all corrupt and evil. And we said, you know what? You're going to do that to us? You're going to call us bitter clingers who cling to God and guns and xenophobia? We're going to nominate this guy over here who smacks you guys as hard as possible in the face, who grabs you like a member of the Three Stooges by the nose and then pokes you in the eyes with his index and middle fingers. That's the guy who we're going to pick. And guess what? In cultural terms, it's actually working. The White House Correspondents' Dinner actually had to revise its entire way of doing business. Okay, the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which is supposed to be nerd prom, this is where all the journalists get together with the Hollywood folks and they go and laugh at Republicans in the name of journalism. Well, now they have decided they're not going to host a comedian anymore who just goes there and rips into President Trump and Republicans. Instead, they're going to bring in Ron Chernow, who's a biographer of various presidents. And instead of being nerd prom with comedians and Comedy Central figures, it's going to be an actual historical lecture by Ron Chernow, and it'll be about journalism. So President Trump somehow fixed the White House Correspondents' Association dinner. Why? Because he said he wasn't going to go. He said he wasn't going to go, and so he ended up fixing the dinner. This, of course, made Hollywood crazy. Michelle Wolf, who made a name for herself last year at the White House Correspondents' Association dinner, earned herself a Netflix series that was canceled in about 35 seconds because she's garbage at her job. She actually tweeted out, "The White House Correspondents' Association are cowards. The media is complicit, and I couldn't be prouder." Well, prouder of what? Of basically finishing the dinner? Of destroying the dinner? The media destroyed themselves, and President Trump allowed them to do it. These cultural battles are one of the reasons the right loves President Trump. There's great benefit to that. There really is. There's also a certain amount of risk to it that we on the right would do well to acknowledge because, again, I don't think that it's a case of we have to pick one or the other. We can fight the culture war at the same time that we act classy. If we can do that, we'll win. If we don't, then we will lose.
Thanksgiving is a time of great American traditions, and today we continue a very special one when a lucky turkey gets a presidential pardon. That turkey is so lucky. I've never seen such a beautiful turkey. It has been stated that President Abraham Lincoln, Honest Abe, was the first president to grant such a pardon after his son Tad befriended the Christmas turkey and implored his father, "Please, Dad, please, save it." In this grand tradition, I am pleased to announce that today's lucky bird and guest of honor is named Peas, along with his alternate named Carrots. The children will understand that. The winner of this vote was decided by a fair and open election conducted on the White House website. This was a fair election. Unfortunately, Carrots refused to concede and demanded a recount, and we're still fighting with Carrots. And I will tell you, we've come to a conclusion. Carrots, I'm sorry to tell you, the result did not change. It's too bad for Carrots.